Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first of 3 prediction shows. Tonight we start in the world of mixed martial arts. Boys, we've got UFC 312 coming from the Kudos Bank Arena, Sydney, Australia. Same place where the challenger Sean Strickland beat Israel Adesanya to claim the middleweight title a couple of years ago. He's now challenging again in a rematch against champ Dricus Du Plessis, who coincidentally beat Israel Adesanya 2 in his last fight. Boys, first fight happened in Canada, I believe it was around about a year ago, maybe a bit of change above that year mark as well. DDP edged it in a close fight. It was a good fight to watch as well. Sean Strickland's performance is aging quite well in that fight, in my opinion. DDP's pretty much finished everyone else that he's faced in the UFC. Robert Whittaker, Brunson, Darren Till. Obviously, his last fight against Israel Adesanya, he's finished most of his top opponents that he's faced. Strickland obviously has problems that he can cause DDP, in my opinion. I'll come to both of you individually on the matchup, but do you think Strickland DDP is a right fight to make for this fight for this fight card? Should I say?
No.
Go on, mate. I'll let you go.
Who should have been in?
Absolutely not. Anybody but Sean Strickland. I can't cope with him. I was a fan previously. He's took his shtick a little bit too far, but that's irrelevant, right? Irrelevant of the shit that comes out of his mouth, the utter nonsense that comes out of his mouth. He didn't deserve the first fight. He got the first fight by default as the 8th ranked middleweight in the UFC. The original fight against Izzy, right, to get him in, and then he ends up defending against Du Plessis. To be honest, I thought he actually edged that fight. I gave him that fight. I thought he won it, if I'm honest. But I believe they didn't want him to be champion. I just believe that, for whatever reason, anyway, he didn't get the nod. But I don't believe he's done anything other than run Du Plessis close in the first match to get this fight. I would have rather have seen Hamzat. I believe that Hamzat has put himself right to the top because of the destructive way that he dismantled and submitted Robert Whittaker. I believe that in itself would justify a title shot for me. I think he's more deserving. I'm not sure whether it's the fact that we're leading up to, Ramadan, possibly. I know Hamzat has visa issues.
Yeah, he can't fight in a lot of places.
America.
Hamzat,
and I think, and I know previously that trying to get a visa to go to Australia, that it is difficult. But as far as I'm aware, Hamzat's not a career criminal. I believe that his visa issues are tied to the Chechen guy the Hamzan Kadyrov. I believe that his visa issues are to do with that more than criminal convictions, etc. But I don't know. Yeah, for me, it's a strange one. Certainly to put on in Australia. I know that we've got 4 or 5 Australians on the prelims and the undercard, but for me, it's just got no relevance as a main event. Be headlining in Sydney. Yeah, Sean Strickland's a bit of a character, and some fans will watch him, but he don't get that many bums on seats. Dricus is not a massive shit talker. Doesn't get many bums on seats himself as a headliner. So for me, no, it's the wrong main event, full stop. I'll watch it. I think it's an intriguing fight based off the first one, but I don't believe it'll be anything like the first fight. But we'll come on to predictions afterwards, but I'll let Liam.
Look, is it the right fight to make? Absolutely not. Would I have rather have seen Chimaev or anyone other than Sean Strickland in the opposite corner, if I'm being honest? Yes. The only reason this is in Sydney, Dana made a big song and dance about getting the Australia deal. We got the deal with the Sydney government. They have to do 2 cards a year in Sydney. So he was praying amongst all prayers that Adesanya managed to beat Du Plessis last August, didn't. So we've ended up in this position, haven't we? I mean, Du Plessis had a lot of South Africans in Perth back in August because South African rugby team had played the night before in Perth. So 1,500 of them brought the tickets. You got the South African rugby team there. It generated an atmosphere. You're not going to have that this time. So there you go. They're 1,500 down on the gate already. It's a worse card than what we had in August, the last time they were in Australia. I know that was Perth, but it's a worse card. There isn't as many entertaining names on there. So it's just a strange move all around, really. in terms of the matchup, look, I don't think the UFC want either Du Plessis or Strickland as their middleweight champion. I think that's the reality of the situation we're in. Dana knows the pathway he wants for this division, but because, as Jay's just said, Chimaev has issues fighting once every year and a half at some points, or can only be in certain countries, you can't hold a whole division up. If he was doing to the middleweight division what has happened to the heavyweight division with the John Jones situation, then, fans would be even more disgruntled than they already are. Because as we touched on last night, the UFC star and the UFC product is not as strong as it was, say, pre-2020.
No stars left. There's no
it's nowhere near as strong, Liam. You bang on there. Hi, Ryan. Thanks for tuning in. I heard about Strickland that potentially having staff. I heard about that.
Middleweight has lost its star in Adesanya. Adesanya losing in Saudi last weekend was a changing of the guard. You would imagine he's now going to retire. You can not see any feasible way he gets back to a championship belt.
Don't say it. How dare you say that? Me and you's going to fall out, mate. Don't say that. Don't say that.
It hurts me to say it, mate, but it's a change of the guard now. Dane has now got to look for a new cash cow in the middleweight division or a new start, and he doesn't see it as being either of these two guys.
Yeah, Hamzat Chimaev's his man.
There's too many issues around Chimaev. You can't afford to have a champion that can only fight in one territory, but you only have a deal there to go once a year.
And his other middleweight that he had lined up, they're talking about him retiring now after that loss. Shara Bullet.
Might go, yeah.
On about him having to retire because he can't get clearance anyway outside of UAE. Saudi, etc. Sorry to hijack Liam, but he was the other. Dana is having to, whether he likes it or not, is having to lean into a certain market, the Russian, the Muslim, the Chechen, that side. They've got some great fighters. They've got some big names. So he's leaning into it because he can have massive cards in Saudi and Dubai. There might not be the raucous, beer swigging, screaming, ripping the shirt off crowds that you get in the Western world.
Yeah.
But you make 5 times as much money. You can make 5 times as much money, and merch, etc. like that sells in abundance online. And I believe that Shara Bullet has caused a massive problem for him losing. Honest to God, I'd have rather seen MVP go in at last minute. I'd have rather seen anybody than Strickland. I just, it's a non-event for me as a headline. I would have rather have seen the girls headline it than these two.
That's a great fight. Hi, Antonio. Thanks for tuning in again, my friend.
The other thing for me, I think the other thing for me as well, when you look at this card, is every time the UFC go to Australia, bar the Whittaker Adesanya fights, what was that, 2018, they've always gone that on Australian time, it's Sunday, nearly Monday morning, just to fit the prime time.
8:30 in the morning, they'll be ring walking.
Yeah, just to fit the prime time in America. That's okay, crazy. Like I said, if you've got enough local talent. You're not going to get an arena bouncing or good enough pay-per-view buys for this sort of cards, and that's a problem for the UFC as well. The first pay-per-view of the year wasn't the strongest. The last one of 2024 definitely wasn't, with the flyweights headlining. I know when Ian Gary fought Shavkat, but again, the UFC have changed them. I'm not saying they've changed their model, but the way their model is working just doesn't look like it's fitting in for a bigger audience.
That's just reminded me as well. So Pantoja was meant to be headlining UFC 314.
Yep.
He's come out today and said he's not even signed a contract. They said
that's what I mean. They seem to be throwing together these cards almost like, last minute. I know 313 is Hooker against Gaethje and Pereira against Ankalaev, which is a good card. You can't say that it's not. But it feels thin. The schedule feels very. I mean, let me know if I'm off the mark there, boys. But for me, it feels thinner than in previous years. Anyway, a lot of the stars, like you say, have lost. Max Holloway, Israel Adesanya. They're all.
They've put Tatiana Suarez, right, in a world title fight. Liam, you're the stat man. Was her last fight against Nina Nunes?
No, it was against Jessica Andrade, I think, because I looked at her record in the league.
A while since.
I'll tell you.
Right, but Jessica Andrade's not ranked in the top 5 at strawweight, is she?
She can't be. She's had too many recent losses. It feels
That's
like
what I'm saying, right? Tatiana Suarez, I've been a fan of from. Sorry, go on, Liam.
A year and a half ago,
August 2023.
Right, well, there you go then, right? I knew it was a while ago because she's been injured since then. Her story's fantastic. She overcame cancer, etc. She's wrestled since she was 3 or 4. She's awesome. She's fantastic. I've been a fan of her since before, when she very first came into the UFC, right? I've had interactions with her. She's great. And eventually she deserves a world title shot. Not now. She hasn't fought for a year and a half, right? I don't care what anyone says. You can't be sitting on the couch for a year and a half nursing an injury and then come back for a world title shot. As I said, I'm a fan. Love it. But I'm also a fan of Weili Zhang. This is not the fight for her either. Do you know what I'm saying? And like you said, they've just throwing fights together now. That's exactly what it feels like. Who can we got? Who's free? Right, yeah. Are they ranked in top 10? Yeah, throw them in. Or throw her in.
I'm with you. Heavyweight's been like that too. Yeah, DDP was pieced up at the end of the first fight. He was.
But he looked marked up against Adesanya last year.
Just going back to heavyweights, I was right though, boys, wasn't I?
Yeah, you were right about Jairzinho.
I was right. I just had a feeling they'd get rid, and they got rid.
Bang on the money there. Yeah, big respect to Justin Taffer, but I do agree with you, Antonio. To be fair, his third fight on from the main event on a pay-per-view. It's not. It will be a fun fight, him against Teixeira. But boys, I'm conscious of time. Let's get some predictions in for DDP against Strickland. I'll kick off. I think DDP wins. I picked against him in his last 3 or 4. I'm done with picking against DDP. I think he wins a decision again, but a bit more of a comprehensive one. I'm going to go with a 4-1 scorecard to DDP. I think he dominates on Saturday night.
I think he smashes him to pieces. 2 rounds. I think he absolutely demolishes him. I think he'll just go strike with him in first round, come out for the second round. I think he'll get his waist, take him down and smash him, ground and pound him. I think it goes 2 rounds, a round and a half. I think he finishes him in round 2. DDP, sorry.
DDP submission, round 3 for me.
Yeah.
He's going to, similar to the Adesanya fight, he's going to find a way to wear Strickland down, and all it's going to take is one moment. Because if you look, all it took was Izzy turning his back slightly, those 3 hammer fists, and then he was giving up his neck on his back when he staggered. That's all it takes for Dricus. Doesn't matter how the fight's going. It doesn't matter how his face is
dangerous everywhere. He's got as many submissions as he has knockouts.
He's got every option. I watched one of his KSW fights this morning. Randomly, it came up on my feed. And he came out and got absolutely battered. He was getting
you're talking about his fight against that guy who went to one championship. What's his name? The Croatian guy. He's quality. And
Dijovic or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, DDP was turtled up at one point, just getting battered. Found a way to get to the hips, got to his back, got him down, let him up, and then knocked him out. So, yeah, I expect him to run through Sean. He knows what Sean's got now. He knows what he needs to do to get the win, and I think he will run through him. I think it'll be easier than a lot of people expect.
Yeah. Well, we've got every outcome covered. Antonio's with DDP as well. I've gone for the decision, Liam submission. Jay's gone with knockout. Let's see how it goes down on Saturday night in Sydney, Australia. We'll be back for a couple of boxing predictions very shortly. Thanks to Antonio Ryan for tuning in. Jay and Liam, as always, for joining me. We'll see you shortly, guys.
See you soon.